Hi, thanks for being in a new video. This time I have full review of the iPhone 16 Pro. Let's get started. Basically, this is a smaller edition than the iPhone 16 Pro Max, but it's exactly the same but smaller. See you next time. Well, let me tell you a little bit more extensively about the small differences it will have with respect to its big brother. But if you want to know the rest of the features they share with its big brother, I invite you to go check out that review. Here I will mention the differences in a quick way. For starters, this one will obviously be cheaper. Its launch price in Mexico in its most basic edition is 25,999 pesos. On the screen, you see the reference price in dollars just to give you an idea, but remember that the prices here are not the same as over there. Possibly the price makes it seem more attractive compared to its big brother, but consider that the most basic edition of this Pro model starts from a capacity that seems insulting for such an expensive device, but it is Apple and can do whatever it wants. But definitely that the storage will be very limited in this version, considering that it also has no possibility to put a microSD card. So you have two choices: either you rely on cloud storage or you buy an edition with more internal storage. But the price at which this device is placed is curious because it competes with some devices from other brands but which are not at its top. For example, against the Galaxy S24 Plus but not yet the Ultra model, or with the Huawei Pure 70 Pro but not yet the Ultra model. In this case, it integrates the same photographic system of the Pro Max model, which is the top of the range iPhone but in a more compact edition and is therefore cheaper. So it could be attractive, although believe me, its opponents could compete well against it in some aspects. But if you're looking for an iPhone that has everything of the Pro Max but cheaper, this is a good option. In fact, it's one of the few compact phones left on the market that are going to offer you a tremendous photography system and very good features. Obviously, in design, the difference will be exclusively in terms of size and weight. In fact, they maintain exactly the same thickness of 8.25 millimeters. But in this case, we are going to find 199 grams, so it is much lighter than its big brother. It's also narrower and less tall, so we're definitely going to find a more compact device, but the rest of the design features are exactly the same, with the same color palette, the same camera control, and everything absolutely the same. The screen will also be smaller than the Pro Max model, coming in at 6.3 inches. However, it is larger than the last generation, so we are in front of a device that also has this design with ultra-thin bezels, as we see in the Pro Max model, which makes it really very nice to display. But basically, the difference from the Pro Max is exclusively in size, because the rest of the display technologies will be exactly the same. And just like I told you, the rest of the features, including the front camera, the rear cameras, the sound, the microphones, the video recording quality, and everything will be exactly the same as the Pro Max model. So I invite you to go check out that review. Let's focus now on the battery, which will be another difference from the larger model, because it's obvious that being a more compact model, the battery will also be smaller. You already know that the battery capacity is a mystery because Apple does not communicate it officially. However, unofficially, we know that the battery is 3,582 milliampere hours. A battery that definitely looks like it is a very small battery if you compare it to what we see in the Android world. But we already know that Apple optimizes their system very well, the processor is very efficient, and lately Apple has been giving very good numbers on battery life. So in this case, doing a very intense discharge test, running a graphic benchmark repeatedly with maximum brightness on the screen and the flashlight on, it gave 4 hours of duration. That is, its autonomy is very similar to what we find in Android devices with batteries of 5,000 milliampere hours. So really, the battery, I think, doesn't disappoint. In fact, it is very curious because in this type of very intense power consumption activities, it is very similar to what the Pro Max model can give us with only 16 minutes of difference in the test I did. Although obviously in less complex tasks, this difference of 16 minutes could be multiplied. It all depends on the type of user you are, but I think it is a battery that will perform well enough. And with respect to the charging speed, we are going to notice that in the initial stage, it will have practically the same charging speed as its big brother, but in the total time, it did charge a little faster because the battery is smaller. So with 15 minutes, it recovered 31% of its total. At 30 minutes, it got up to 56%, and so far it remains very similar to the Pro Max model. But the full charge it finished in about 104 minutes. So I think it's a device that's not going to excel obviously in fast charging. That's been clear for many generations now, but it can get to charge a little bit faster than the Pro Max model, although in practical life it won't make much difference. And again, the rest of the features will be the same as the Pro Max model in terms of connectivity, ecosystem, software, and other things, but in performance we are going to find a small difference, because in this case, being a more compact model, there is less cooling space. This in addition to the difference that I had already told you that in this Pro model, it starts at 128 gigabytes, while in the Pro Max model, it starts from 256. So let me tell you how this device did in gaming. We first ran the test prioritizing the refresh rate, and yes, it was able to get up to 120 frames per second. So the truth is that it runs pretty well. What's remarkable, just like the Pro Max model, is that it has this ability to reach 120 frames per second in Battle Royale mode. This is in terms of graphic compatibility, since Android does not normally give us this option available. It maintained a very good level of stability, with few fluctuations, although it did get hotter than its older brother, reaching 41.6 degrees Celsius, while its older brother was at 40 degrees Celsius. Then we tested this game again, but now giving priority to the graphic quality, and again it maintained very good stability, very good gameplay, very good fluidity, although it did have a small stumble in the low peak frames per second, but nothing too serious, only that again it got to heat up almost a degree more than his older brother. When playing Legends, we realized that also the fact of having a slightly smaller screen can hurt the gaming experience a bit because it reduces the field of view a bit, or everything looks a little smaller. And in this case, having a screen with such a pronounced curve in the corners, it could also adapt in a worse way the buttons that now appear a little smaller. But speaking specifically about the performance, we noticed a good experience, again with some fluctuations but minimal. The low peak was 34, and in fact in this case it had a very similar temperature to its big brother, so we did not notice so much difference. The SpongeBob game seems to be perfectly well adapted because it didn't have any kind of problem, it had excellent stability, and I would just like to tell you that here we did notice a little difference in the heating, reaching 42.6 degrees Celsius, so it got slightly warmer than its big brother, but the difference in performance was practically imperceptible. And finally, we played Genshin Impact, and curiously in this game the device warmed up less than its big brother. But I say it's curious because apparently the device somehow noticed that it was going to overheat too much if it forced the device to maintain an extremely stable frames per second experience. So note please that it had very low stability, there was a lot of fluctuations, although the lowest peak is still quite high at 54 frames per second, but definitely that it wasn't able to maintain anything close to 120 frames per second stable. So even though it has a lot of power, maybe the warm-up can play against it in some scenarios. However, as I told you at the beginning of the video, being a compact device that integrates virtually the same features as the top-of-the-line model that is huge, it is very attractive to a good number of users. In fact, I personally would like Samsung to launch a kind of Galaxy S24 Ultra Mini or something similar. That is, a model that integrates the same photographic system that the Ultra model has, but in such a compact body. At the moment, I think the iPhone doesn't have that many competitors that can really offer the same premium experience in a device this compact. So it will probably be an attractive device, although personally I would be more inclined to go with the last generation iPhone 15 Pro or even 14 Pro, which are going to have very similar performance. Although in this case, there is an important evolution in the telephoto camera that in past generations had zoom 13x and now has gone to zoom 5x. So the improvement in zoom will be important, but in the rest of the things, the truth is that the experience will be very similar to the past generations. For the moment, we have reached the end of this video. I hope you liked it. If you did, you know you can tell us, and we'll see you next time.